Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland in Chiang Mai, Thailand, for another informative and insightful article about Tiananmen Square going back to 1989. Before we get started, please make a donation. There's Patreon, there's PayPal, there's fundraiser. You can make a one-time payment, $1, anything to help with the many hundreds of hours that I spend researching, writing, and producing these articles and programs would be deeply appreciated, and a super boost to my morale and my wife's morale for all the time I spend doing this, and her being a keyboard widow. Thank you. This one is entitled, Every June 4th, the West's Big Lie Propaganda Machine, the BLPM, spews projectile vomit across Earth, hoping to destroy the Chinese people and their communist, socialist way of life. Here we go. Pictured above, one of the 300 mostly unarmed People's Liberation Army PLA soldiers who were murdered by CIA/MI6, quote, peace-loving, end of quote, protesters. Like this patriotic martyr, many were torched to death. Here's the actual article. We moved back to China in 2010. Thereafter, my research, understanding, and reporting on 1989's Tiananmen Square protests saw a sea change over the years, in fact, a radical transformation for the better and for the truth. During and after writing the first two books of the China trilogy, see below, they are 44 Days and China Rising, I saw before my very own eyes a lifetime of formal U.S. education and socio-political inculcation crumble into dust like some holy temple of orthodox certitude and unquestionable dogma that proved to be a mirage. I later began to call this whole process of your Anglo-Land's brainwashing the Big Lie Propaganda Machine, or the BLPM. Now that I was again outside of the United States and Europe, where I had lived and worked the previous 14 years, and in parentheses, 7 years in China and 10 years in Africa and the Middle East before that, I began to clearly perceive what I started naming the Great Western Firewall, or the GWF. From afar, it is as transparent as day. However, as long as you are inside its acid drip media bubble, it is usually invisible to the citizens concerned, like Jim Carrey's lead character in the art-imitating reality movie The Truman Show. At the head of the BLPM's trophy room is the internationally infamous 4 June 1989 Tiananmen Square event. How Western Empire has exploited it, twisted and conflated it to completely transmogrify the real truth into its greatest post-war propaganda hoax is, quite frankly, impressive, but demoralizing and frustrating at the same time because it never stops. It's 31 years later, 1/5 of the way into the 21st century, and every year the ritualistic flogging of 20% of humankind is performed across the global stage by an imperial torquemada, like paintings of the macabre torture chambers during the Spanish Inquisition. Every June, it is the anti-Chinese, anti-communist, anti-communism, anti-socialism gift from the bowels of BLPM hell that just keep on spewing poisonous projectile vomit across planet Earth. As plainly exposed in my interview with J.P. Leonard and Andrew Schleidman discussing their foundational book by Udo Ulfkott, entitled Prostitutes in the Pay of the CIA, A Confession from the Profession. This is only made possible by the well-orchestrated government corporate BLPM, which marches in synchronized brown shirt goose step, not only in Uranglo land, but in every non-socialist pro-Western country across our pale blue dot, which is almost all of them. It is hard to keep your head above water when our world is submerged in a tsunami of imperial colonial media puke. The proof of the effectiveness of the BLPM is that over the years, all credible journalists and witnesses who formerly were on the propaganda steamroller have since recanted, including Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times, and all the rest of the, quote, "I was there," end of quote, eyewitnesses who quietly climbed down from, quote, "hundreds and thousands mowed down by tanks and machine gun nests," end of quote, who quit calling it a, quote, "massacre," end of quote, or at least had the good graces to start keeping their mouths shut. Even Uber establishment Columbia Journalism Review finally fessed up, 11 years too late, that no one died that night and the whole BLPM horror show was a hoax. Quote, "no one died," end of quote, is a figure of speech because some did. Baba Beijing officially reported that about 700 died in total, 300 of those being People's Liberation Army, PLA soldiers. 5,000 who went into the square unarmed and were viciously attacked, and many burned to death by CIA MI6 trained operatives. These numbers were confirmed by a now declassified U.S. National Security Archive, NSA, cable. Actually, there's two of them, I'm sorry, confirmed by two now declassified U.S. National Security Archive NSA cables. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that one. We know that CIA MI6 was there because Dr. Color Revolution himself, Albert Einstein Institute's Gene Sharp, was at Tiananmen Square. Sharp's hatchet man, Colonel Robert Halvey, had earlier trained these CIA thugs in Hong Kong. To wit, and I quote from a website, he, Halvey, also trained in Hong Kong the student leaders from Beijing in mass demonstration techniques, which they were to subsequently use in the Tiananmen Square incident of June 1989, and is now believed to be acting as an advisor to Falun Gong, that's nice, the religious sect of China, in similar civil disobedience techniques. Colonel Halvey nominally retired from the Army in 1991, but has been working with Albert Einstein and Soros long before then. Note how phony liberal, and quote, end of quote, liberal NGOs like George Soros's umbrella of color revolution chop shops are always in the mix. Halvey later went to Ukraine in 2014 to train the Uranglo land's Nazi goons, who have since overrun that hapless country and turned it into an impoverished death trap and hellhole. In my previous series of Tiananmen articles listed below, I exposed Dr. Gene Sharp, the founding father and architect of Western Empire's Color Revolution playbook, the blueprint he wrote for overthrowing governments that are not global capitalist colonial whores. Mr. Sharp spent his career hiding behind his phony NGO, the Albert Einstein Institution, with his avuncular mien and, quote, peaceful nonviolent sanctions/struggles, end of quote. Naming his CIA storefront after Albert Einstein is a perverted irony, given that this eminent physicist and scientist was a true red socialist and pacifist. The proof of his presence is in this article, which I downloaded and saved in case it ever gets censored. Enough said. We have Gene Sharp bragging about his efforts to destroy the way of life for the 1.4 billion citizens of free, independent, communist, socialist People's Republic of China. The article is pure Orwellian doublespeak, just the kind of pablum CIA tripe that journalists at the New York Times, CNN, and BBC make well-paid careers out of. It is deliciously awful. Nonetheless, it also confirms that Deng Xiaoping arrested and evicted Gene Sharp on 6 June 1989 for obvious reasons. Unfortunately, Deng evicted Sharp to Hong Kong, where the CIA/MI6 Operation Yellowbird, it was called Operation Yellowbird, one word, was planned for activation as Tiananmen Square was being emptied on 4 June. They, the churches, with churches, Western embassies in Beijing, Hong Kong mafia, police, and wealthy business people helped their trained saboteur turncoats escape mainland China. The total number of traitors who fled their country and fellow citizens was over 400. After fleeing their motherland with their tails between their legs, many of them were dined, feted, and given ersatz, quote, freedom awards, end of quote, and sent full ride to top Ivy League or European schools. From there, they could join the ranks of the, quote, I hate China and communism, socialism, end of quote, brigade, to be splashed across the BLPM mainstream media, teach in universities, write SCAR literature, get paid 5-figure speaking fees, and or work in neocon and neoliberal think tanks. Their self-loathing and cowardice are legendary, as the CIA's leading saboteurs were already getting snuck out of the country as the protest petered out on the night of 4 June. Here is one of the CIA head honchos being interviewed 1 full week before then. Her name is Chai Lang, who went on to Princeton University and today is a darling of the radical right. Here's the interview. Chai Lang said, all along, I've kept it to myself because being Chinese, I felt I shouldn't badmouth the Chinese, but I can't help thinking sometimes, and I might as well say it. You, the Chinese, are not worth my struggle. You are not worth my sacrifice. What we actually are hoping for is bloodshed, the moment when the government is ready to brazenly butcher the people. Only when the square is awash with blood will the people of China open their eyes. Only then will they really be united. But how can I explain all of this to my fellow students? And what is truly sad is that some of the students and famous well-connected people are working hard to help the government to prevent it from taking such measures. For the sake of their selfish interests and their private dealings, they are trying to cause our movement to disintegrate and get us out of the square before the government becomes desperate, so desperate that it takes action. And then the interviewer named Cunningham asked, are you going to stay in the square yourself? Chai Lang, no. Why? Chai Lang, because my situation is different. My name is on the government's blacklist. I'm not going to be destroyed by this government. I want to live. Anyway, that's how I feel about it. I don't know if people will say I'm selfish. I believe that people have to continue the work I have started. A democracy movement can't succeed with only one person. I hope you don't report what I just said for the time being, okay? Yeah, well, it got reported. End of quote. And my response is, Chai, Too bad you were and are too gutless and psychopathic to apologize to the 700 soldiers and protesters you helped send to their early sacrificial deaths. I guess you're too busy living luxuriously on their blood and bones. Most people don't know how close CIA MI6 and their Western embassy accomplices came to overthrowing Baba Beijing the summer of 1989, which I cover in step-by-step research detail in the China trilogy, see below. Baba Beijing's Politburo, the top 25 leaders, had voted a neoliberal reformer, Zhao Ziyang, to be party secretary in 1987. Like Mikhail Gorbachev in the USSR, he had drunk from the poison chalice of, quote, Western democracy, privatize everything, and was in the process of pushing policies similar to Gorbachev's, ones that brought about a decade of global capitalist rape, plunder, and starvation in the former Soviet Union, the process of which was about to start in a few short months, November 1989. Contrary to the BLPM's projectile vomit, the students were not demanding, quote, Western freedom and democracy. No, they were livid about double-digit inflation, crony and nepotistic government business corruption, and the rapid dismantling of Mao-era socialist programs that supported the 99%. Ergo, in reality, they were protesting against Zhao's neoliberal policies. The Politburo, realizing its errors, removed Zhao from office 3 weeks after Tiananmen, whereupon he was kept under house arrest until his death in 2005 at the age of 85. In many capitalist countries, he would have been tried, then executed, or thrown in prison. His state funeral and media articles / broadcasts publicly rehabilitated him. In 1989, Baba Beijing said that Zhao had, quote, supported a counter-revolutionary riot, end of quote. In 2005, they said, he had made contributions to the party and the people, but made serious mistakes during the 1989 political disturbance. Both statements are right, depending on your point of view. Well, friends, fans, and followers of China Rising Radio Sinoland, I will keep doing my usual ongoing China/geopolitics research and have a Tiananmen update for you next year. 365 days and counting until the next annual global BLPM flogging of 20% of humanity who are thriving, free, safe, and prosperous in peaceful democratic China. Below this, if you go to the original article, which will be included in the description for YouTube and SoundCloud, and of course on China Rising Radio Sinoland, I have listed all of my articles back to 2016 about the Tiananmen protests. I have also listed 8 articles that are not mine, but that are just really good, that help me understand better and find out the real truth about Tiananmen. And then what's really cool is I found a link with Getty images and 72 pages of photos from May to June 1989 related to Tiananmen. An amazing collection indeed. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland. Thank you and goodbye.